a child growing up in suburban Colorado, you'd think I wouldn't know much about guns. However, as the child of veterans and gun enthusiasts, I was surrounded by weapons of all kinds. A weekend of fun was driving up to the mountains, camping, and target practice. I was also a loner, picked on and bullied. And some advocates for gun control will tell you that is a recipe designed for gun violence. I like to think a huge difference is that I was taught to respect and even fear the power of a gun. I was taught to never aim a gun at anything I didn't intend to kill. I was taught there's no such thing as an unloaded firearm. I was taught there is sanctity in all life. And to ignore bullies, because it was the 80s and because they're jealous was a valid parenting tip. As recently as 1956, gun safety classes were taught as part of a regular classroom curriculum in some public schools around the country. And it might surprise you that this is actually something that people on both sides of gun control argument can agree on. More education can actually be a good thing. According to an ABC News story, both the NRA and the Center to Prevent Handgun Violence have programs designed to teach children the basics of gun safety with very different approaches. The NRA program, called Eddie the Eagle, focuses on stop, don't touch, get an adult when they see a gun. The Center's program is called STAR, and its message is focus on anger management, conflict resolution, and possible consequences of handling a gun. Of course, each side says the other is doing it wrong. Dr. Stephen Hargotten, chairman of emergency medicine at the Medicine College of Wisconsin, doesn't believe education is the only solution. Neither of these classes have been tested, and with more education, there is a concern that parents and educators will become too reliant on education and become lax in other areas. In addition to this lack of general education, has media violence played a role in the increased gun violence? You'd think that with the rise of violence in TV, music, movies, and video games, that there would be an upswing in gun violence, and in a way, that kind of makes sense. That's not necessarily true. According to a 2014 FBI report in the last decade, there is an average of 16.4 active shooter incidents in the U.S. every year, more than 150% higher than the annual rate between 2000 and 2006. Sounds conclusive, right? But just because the rise in crimes has happened at the same time as the rise in violence in media, doesn't mean that violent media caused it. The shooters at Sandy Hook and the Aurora theaters played violent video games. But so do I. So do a large group of my friends, and hundreds of thousands of law-abiding citizens every day. As a matter of fact, a 2014 study in the psychology of popular media culture showed a decrease of violence in violence after games were released. This graph shows what it would be if violence showed it. This is actually where gun violence is in the United States compared to what it should be if it followed the media in violence. After every mass shooting, you are bound to hear someone in the media state the shooter was reportedly mentally unstable, under a doctor's care, taking medications for depression, and may have been suffering from undiagnosed schizophrenia. And yes, in all of the recent mass shootings, the assailants were mentally disturbed. That is undisputed, and even the experts will say no sane person will do what these people did. According to a report from American Journal of Psychiatry, published in 2006, less than 3 to 5% of people with mental illness commit crimes in the United States. To further prove the point, between 2001 and 2010, nearly 120,000 people died in gun-related violence, and only 5% of those people were diagnosed with some sort of mental illness, according to the National Center for Health Statistics. There are so many studies that seem to contradict each other, and that is what makes regulating guns based on a mental health is such a tricky idea. The experts can't even agree. One thing is certain, almost all of the people that committed these horrible crimes were seeing a mental health professional, and every one of them from Sandy Hook to Aurora got their weapons legally. The so-called gun show loophole doesn't actually exist. You have to wait for your background check to come back. So if violence in media and mental illness have no discernible effect on gun violence, how will changing the laws change the violence? 50 years ago, we were taught how to use and respect guns, ourselves and each other. Laws were much less strict, and maybe we need to get back to that instead of trying to legislate our way out of this issue. Contact your congressman. Let them know what you think. Which side do you stand on?